Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. No matter what time of the day or night it is a great time to be a Gamecock. I am Tony, here with Adam, raised as gentlemen. You are into the Ladies First podcast, breaking down all the recent happenings in South Carolina women's basketball. And Adam and I loved being in attendance this past Sunday, December 15th. Got to see our women take down the USF Bulls. South Florida downed in Colonial Life Arena, but it was a game where they still fought back, and this is something where, as South Carolina goes through the trials of this difficult season, we're really going to need to hunker down, especially getting into those third and fourth quarter stretches, because I feel like this was a game South Carolina tried to coast a little bit too early. They let South Florida get back in the game a little bit, hit some threes. Now, that's not always going to happen, but depending on who the opponent is and some sharpshooters that some of these teams have, some of the points that could come out of nowhere in a quick span of time, they just need to work on cleaning up some games. But overall, it was a fantastic atmosphere, a good crowd on hand for a cloudy and cool Sunday afternoon in Columbia. Adam, what did you think of the game this past Sunday? It was really nice to actually get you in there, especially going into this part of 2024 and as we're getting closer to that SEC season.
Yeah, so actually my first Gamecocks basketball game for the ladies. Never been to one. Been to two football games since moving down here, but missed out on the chance to go with you last season. Just schedules never really lined up. Finally got to go on Sunday. Had a lot of fun. Felt like you could really, for like a smaller game, so to speak, not one that's so, boosted like a ranked opponent. You still felt the energy that was there. There were moments where the crowd would be right back into it. The crowd would be a little quiet. And then once they had like to bring the noise or something, or a good play, a good steal or whatever, it would just jump right back to life. And I really liked it. Big comparisons I've made since being down here. Obviously, us from attending Penn State games when we were students there. We mentioned it as like the concessions, fantastic.
Oh my God, the Colonial Life Arena concessions are fantastic. I don't know if that is just more of a Southern thing or SEC thing, but yeah, they put on a fantastic spread for the fans. From just my experience and yours as well as a Penn State students, I don't know, the concessions were subpar, to say the least. Just the options were not there. There was, of course, no alcohol sales. They didn't have boo for the 21 up crowd that, of course, wants to have a drink or two. So it is something where the fan atmosphere, just getting people into the arena and having a really nice just opportunity to not just view a game and view an incredible team, but also to have a great fan experience. Just truly a shout out to the university and Colonial Life Arena for putting that on. And now happy that you've got to see that now firsthand, and you're going to continue to get to see these games pile up, and you'll see it a lot more.
Yeah, not my first time in Colonial Life. Went to see a concert there last year.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Jonas Brothers.
Good old Jonas Brothers.
Yeah.
But a great arena, great setting for concerts or obviously a basketball game. I had a lot of fun. The people around us were very friendly.
Oh, my God, yeah. Great section.
Very good section to be in. They were very high energy, obviously very big fans while we were there. Very much into the game. And in between my slices of Little Caesars we got over there, or CC's or whatever it was, I very much enjoyed what I was watching on the court from the team. Like you mentioned earlier, it seemed like they did kind of pull off way too soon.
A little too soon.
And I mentioned it a few times throughout the game where I would just lean over and say, it almost seems like we're not doing anything wrong. It's just USF is doing more right. And that seemed like a good way to describe it on your end, because USF was not willing to just go down. It's like, okay, we're going to lose. Let's just stop fighting, run the clock out. They were fighting, and they were fighting for every possession, every shot they could make. And that's what made, the final score probably not what it felt like. It never really felt like USF was going to claw back in the game, but they did put pressure on the Gamecocks so that they shouldn't have been coasting like they did, but inevitably didn't end up mattering in the end.
Now, definitely felt a little too comfortable on the court from just what I can tell and analyzing the game. There were still some really good plays, a lot of great moments. Malaysia Full Wiley had that really nice move to the bucket. She had a couple nice cuts. She was still on the lower end of the scoring overall. We'll get to those stats in just a second. But still, a lot of great passing, some good rebounding from the team. But there wasn't even really the most opportunities for a lot of rebounding because USF made a decent amount of their shots, especially from three-point range. Overall, it's not too flashy. They shot around 40%, but they did shoot 55% from three. So that is definitely something that helped make the score look a little bit prettier in their favor when you're shooting that hot, especially in the fourth quarter. And that's what I'm talking about when we're talking about coasting. South Florida, it looks like a football score. They outscored South Carolina 21-14 in that fourth quarter because they just kind of left the foot off the gas. They always had one of their players open for three, and they were actually knocking them down. So, it's not more of a statement win. It wasn't the prettiest win, and it wasn't anywhere near the spread for any of one of those bettors out there that aren't in South Carolina because still not legal here. But they did not reach that spread that was around 40 points. As they got a 16-point victory. And it easily could have been closer to 40 if they were continuing to hold on to that aggression. But it just really wasn't there from some points of the game. But either way, still great to see. Fantastic to actually sit in on a game. I cannot wait to see some SEC games this year. I know when you have those familiar opponents, there's just going to be a different level of hype and more interest from fans, especially as students are not in the process of wrapping things up like they were because this was the weekend prior to graduation, which was today. Also, we'll get to a shout out there because we had two players that graduated today, still going to play, but graduated today. And that is going to be something where going into January, you're going to have that hype of getting towards the spring. You're getting into the conference schedule. Students are back, and graduation, anything when you're looking towards May and June, getting towards the summer, that's a long way down the pipe. Right now, you're still seeing everyone just going through the holiday season and the changes. And that's why also I feel, even though it was a Sunday game and USF not too bad of an opponent, you didn't have Colonial Life Arena packed too much. But
didn't have the fanfare of like a ranked matchup.
No, which is understandable. USF's still a good program. And actually, this was a rematch, Adam. I looked into just a brief moment, wanted to see how recent we played USF, if there was any past instance, and it's like I wonder why this seemed like a really familiar opponent. And they hosted them in the 2023 NCAA tournament when they hosted one of the games in the second round. USF did come here, and that's what I'm talking about. USF is still a proud program. They have some success in their own right, and they made sure to show it. They hung in there tough. They didn't get completely run off the floor, which for an unranked opponent is very admirable from them. But what's up?
Oh, yeah. I was just about to say when you mentioned in the fourth quarter, USF outscoring South Carolina by 7. It was a split game quarter-wise. I mean, in the second quarter, USF and USC, same amount of points. Fourth quarter, USF had it. It's just the difference came in the first and the third, and that's when South Carolina was able to build that lead that they really coasted on. So it wasn't like this was a four-quarter beatdown. It was USF putting up a tough fight, closer than, obviously, as you mentioned, the bettors, or those who set the betting lines, thought it would be.
And this is something where if you're going to go into a game like this and try to analyze it like that, and from what I can see sitting there in that arena, watching this team go through the first quarter, that is what I would anticipate. The way the first quarter went, they built a 12-point lead. They had a lot of great energy coming out. That's how they should be playing the entire game. It's not always going to happen. I understand that. There's different ebbs and flows, and your opposition could still knock down shots no matter how much more talented you are. Shots just go down sometimes. But if that first quarter is something that was copy and pasted throughout the game, that would be a little bit more of what fans probably expected. And this is something, again, as we dive into these numbers, everything was still very much in the way of spread around. There wasn't anyone that ran away with the player of the game status. Chloe Kitts had 10 points. Sanaya Fagan, I will say, really, really happy with her. Thank you, number 20. She put in 14 points. Great effort from her today. Pow Pow chipped in 10. Raven Johnson only 3, and then Bree Hall 9. That's it from your starters. And then the two best players that produced off the bench, Ashlyn Watkins chipped in a nice 10. She was flirting with the double-double. She had 8 rebounds. And that's the thing. If USF was shooting a little bit more poorly and South Carolina was applying that energy in the first quarter throughout the game, I'm certain that Ashlyn Watkins would have had a double-double because she was cleaning it up pretty nice on those boards. And then Joyce Edwards, love to see this from the freshman phenom from Camden. 15 points from her. She's stringing together some very nice games as she's really starting to get a feel and come into her own, especially with all of these players and the incredible budding talent that is still on this roster overall. Really nice to see from her. She was 6 for 11 from the floor. So thank you very much, Joyce. And all in all, it was still a fantastic effort. Just shy of 80 points. Sally didn't get that as we were talking in the game. The Adams Gamecock apparel store, 20% off for fans for that particular store. Did not get that promotion, but they were really close.
Yeah, I was making mentions of it the whole time. It was like getting closer and getting closer, and whenever as the game got closer to ending and we would miss a shot or not take one, it's like, oh man, can't get that discount.
Not getting that 20%. Nope, you gotta pay $80 now for those. For those Under Armour shirts or polos. I said some of that stuff's expensive, man. But I mean, they do make some nice gear. Shout out to them for still hanging on to South Carolina because Nike seems to be taking over everything.
It really does. And when you have, like in the college football world with Oregon, who gets these nice,
oh God, yeah,
these nice uniforms basically every week. If you stick with the outlier, there's a reason for it. So I'm a big fan of the merch that I've seen, but it is like a wave of Nike taking over.
It is. But yeah, so it's nice to see that at least South Carolina could be one of their flagship schools. So from a program standpoint in college, you're going to get like some of that nice merch. And there's so many nice South Carolina women's basketball shirts just because of the exposure that they help the company get. And like, okay, yeah, we understand this is what fans want. You're still going to have a lot of football apparel, but from just the women's team in general, so many nice shirts. And I have a good little collection of them growing in my closet. So that is where we leave things right now for South Florida, but we have a lot to look on to here. Not as much for the December slate as we're getting towards the holiday season. This is where we're really getting, the foot taken off the gas. We're starting to hit that point of the year where, graduation is over, holidays are coming, and have to, of course, congratulate. It is bittersweet because they're going to be gone next year. But Bree Hall and Tahina Pow Pow graduated on Monday, and that was earlier today because that is when we are recording this podcast on the 16th of December. But officially got their degrees. Sucks though that they're going to be gone next year. It's always tough to see players move on. It's incredible to know that they're going to have some really bright futures ahead of them, whether, it is something that stays in the realm of basketball or perhaps later in life in another professional sense. But, you get to know and you get these household names, and as a fan, you can get really close to these players. It's tough to see, but that's just how the cycle is. Players come and go, and you have to appreciate them while they're here.
Yeah, that's something I've always liked and disliked about the college landscape across all sports, really. Just you have a 4 to 5 year when I really started watching college sports, like this 4 to 5 year span of a class that comes in. You have your favorites, and eventually the favorites are going to have to leave, and you're going to have to develop, obviously, new favorites. And then it's also a testament to the coaches and the scouts and everybody involved for replacing this talent, because you have a lot of names that come through, especially South Carolina, that are just super talented and super important to the team, and to replace them, it's no small feat. So you have to keep, when you take a cog out of the machine, you need to put a new one in that's going to fit just as, if not better, with the team. And in the college landscape, it's very impressive to have these long-lasting dynasties or just runs of competitiveness across the sport, because it's not like the NFL where you can get or I think baseball is probably a better example, where you've seen the last few years, especially these 10-year deals dished
Yeah,
out.
well, so you could just dump a buttload of money,
Yeah.
into all these acquisitions. There's just some crazy deals that go into these players, and there's not a cap system. Everything is so different, Adam, when you're talking about professional sports in college, because you have the NIL deals, of course. You have college players making money now and having that ability, but it is tougher, and you really need to have a solidified university structure and just a really good coach who is able to convince players to want to stay longer, because it's not even just about graduation. It's not just about going to the NBA or the WNBA, of course, for our women's program, but it's just a matter of not even wanting to hit the transfer portal and try and seek opportunities elsewhere.
Yeah, and then there's also the thing of in college, if you like it, I'll bring it back to baseball because they have routinely now have these long-term, basically lifetime contracts. I mean, we saw, what was it, Juan Soto with a 15-year deal with the Mets?
Yeah, it's
like
crazy.
a career deal, essentially. Like that you're here
For a fortune.
for a fortune, of course. But in college, if you have you have a generational talent like Juan Soto, and he goes to the Mets, and he's like, I'm here for 15 years. That's it. Like, obviously there's opt-out trades and so on and so forth. But the main idea, I'm going to be here for the next decade and a half. In college, if you have this generational talent that is life-changing or program-changing, they're not there for very long. They are going pro as soon as possible.
Usually.
Of course, you can get your talent who is loyal. They want their degree. They want to enjoy the college experience, whatever their reason might be. You'll have them still, like I said, 4 years max of playing time. And as compared to a pro career will be as long as you can get a job, essentially, as long as you can start somewhere. It just adds to the disconnect of pro ball and college ball. And I think that's something that's obviously very unique for the college landscape. And it's something that I have, at first, when I was like kind of a casual fan in the realm of college sports, something that kind of sucked, something that it still does, but like stinks. You got to lose them, and then you have to replace them, and then it's a never-ending process. But as you get older, you get more invested in college football and basketball and all college sports. It becomes something that you start to respect the people who make that happen, because you have these guys who are, in terms of football, you have these guys who come in. They're great for 3 years. You can be a generational talent, and then it's like, okay, we saw Trevor Lawrence, one of the greatest, quarterbacks, prospects, was at Clemson for 3 years.
Unfortunately.
Joe Burrow, Joe Burrow, LSU, one massive year, and then he's gone. And then, it's so unique. You don't really have that in professional sports anywhere unless you get these little 1 year rentals, so to speak, sort of like going back to Juan Soto being on the Yankees for 1 year and then moving on. Very rare does a big name player do that. In college, that's how it's built.
But see, that's one thing that is great about South Carolina, as you were talking about before, something that is somewhat of a machine, trying to put the right pieces in the right places, the right cogs to make this machine work. Well, as we're focusing on the college game, especially as we deepen that dive into basketball on the women's side, Dawn Staley's one of the best mechanics when it comes to that point. And this is something where we've just gone through a lot of these different changes and transition periods from before the pandemic to after. So many players that have wanted to stick around for a good deal of time, make sure they're getting close to the end of their career, or actually making it to the end and getting that degree. And that's just something, as we're trying to filter in more and more of this young and budding talent, you're still going to be keeping more of your really talented veterans. And I love to see that you're only going to be going through this process of why would anyone want to go anywhere else? Why would anyone want to try and seek something elsewhere, even if it is coming down to an NIL standpoint? From what I can take and what I've analyzed from this team, just these players just love to be here. They really enjoy South Carolina. They want to have Dawn as their leader, as their coach, because they feel like that's going to not just build them up and make them a better player, but just also as a woman, as someone who's trying to further themselves in life and and just to have that tutelage of someone such as that. And that's only something that I believe as we continue to watch this team and see their success as it rolls forward into the future and other years, it's only going to be adding to more of Don's legacy, adding to more of the legacy of these players, especially ones that continue to further their game, make it to the league. Or again, there's nothing wrong with, of course, just finding a professional career outside of basketball. Whatever anyone wants to decide after college, professional sports aren't always going to be for anyone. And, you can't fault anyone from that, even if you are talented. But it definitely is something where you're giving yourself an incredible opportunity and chance to make that leap to some type of professional ball under a coach like Don.
Yeah, and you see these all around the country. You see these great coaches in any sport who can, who can get the best out of these players, these high school prospects. And if you can prove routinely that you're going to pump out talent to go pro, they're going to want to play for you. We saw it with the last decade with Nick Saban at Alabama. Everyone wanted to go there.
Yeah.
If you're a wide receiver for the last decade, it's been let's go to Ohio State. You have that rotation when you get that repertoire. You've seen it with our alma mater, Penn State. Now you're getting a lot of the high-end tight end prospects switching their commits to Penn State because they have routinely put out tight end prospects.
Even
to
Coach
the NFL.
Prime with Colorado. And then this is something, too, where it's almost like this coaching club. And more of the household names from just your casual fan, it usually is a football. And honestly, it's something I could attest to because I believe they've all been a part now of the All-State Commercial Club. It has been Saban. Coach Prime has been on there now. And so was Dawn. That's the thing. It's like she was the only odd person out. Literally all the people and coaches on these commercials are all high-end names in football. And then there's Dawn, and she was in the commercial with Nick Saban. I remember seeing, I believe it was a few months ago. So it's like you just know. That's the thing. You know how much that you stand out, that you're put on a pedestal with these really well respected and big name coaches that get talked about and get highlighted on all these sports networks all the time, because football is still, no matter any way you slice it, it's still going to be the the top viewed and just overall watched sport, because not even just here in the United States, overall across the globe, that is still a growing sport. Soccer, yes, you have that, of course, and football, as it's referred to in many other nations. But as far as an American sport, I should say, that has growing ties in other places, that is something that is just really exploded in terms of a fan base. And it is centered here in the United States, but there's just a lot of money to be had with it. It is something that you're continuing to see expand. Basketball and football, there are leagues across the globe. Those have already been in place. But now you're starting to see the NFL wanting to expand all these other places. So again, just to bridge that gap, just to show, hey, Don is just being talked about and respected in the realm of these coaches of such a growing and profitable sport. You're going to want to have a group of women that are going to want to play under this person, because obviously she's done an incredible job, and it hasn't even been just as a coach. Of course, she has the history as a player as well, and of course as a media personality too. I love to hear Don's interviews whenever they get her on the mic.
Also, incredible fashion sense.
Oh yeah, yes. Love to see Don's fits, especially because for me, Eagles fan here, I love when she breaks out some of the Birds gear whenever the Eagles are in the playoffs. I'm so sorry. Yeah, well, maybe not on your end. See, it's just different shade of green for you, but love to see that from Don whenever my Birds are doing well, and they are doing well this year. So I expect that for sure.
I would be surprised if a successful lady like Dawn somehow busted out the Jets gear. I would be shocked. She just,
I don't want to associate with that right now.
I'm too successful. I don't need to look down. I don't need to associate with myself with that franchise down there or up there.
They're trying. Yeah, so you never know. That's
all we can ask.
All you can ask. And there's always going to be changes and ebbs and flows in football, especially in a professional sense, but sometimes you could still hold on to more of that success at the college game, and this is something that we started off these podcasts with. If you ever want to go back and check out our first episode, just how we're going into this now, where South Carolina is still looking at the opportunity for a dynasty, easily looking at a dynasty as we go on into the rest of this season. And they're just going to keep on that climb. We're likely going to be rolling through the next two opponents. I'll throw this out there right now as we're going through this part of the show. We have should be two gimme matchups coming up. We got Charleston Southern Thursday at noon on the 19th, and then as we go towards the start of the new year, there's a 10-day gap, so that's nice. There's a 10-day gap between games, so centered around Christmas. I'm sure players are going to have the opportunity to spend time with their families, have a little bit of free time, but they play Wofford. They host them on the 29th. And honestly, it's nice to not have to do any travel in that time. So again, the 19th, they got Charleston Southern, and then the 29th of December hosting Wofford. And both of those, just looking at the rosters, looking overall at the talent between the teams, yeah, I'm definitely worried for Charleston Southern. I wouldn't be surprised at all South Carolina puts up 100 points on them. Wofford, I will say, they've been a bit respectable in their own right as a small school. They're 6-2 coming in on the 29th to Colonial Life Arena. But these are two opponents that we should blow through, that there should not be any problem. I expect our bench players to get a decent amount of playing time. And that, Adam, will then set us up as we look towards the new year. Because starting right out, they have a road game at Missouri, and that is on January 2nd, 7 o'clock on the SEC network. We're really starting to get into that SEC slate, and that's when things get fun. That's when things get interesting. You have the rivalry games coming up. You have those familiar opponents, and this is the part of the season that a lot of people live for because the games just get all that more intense because you have, more fans that are willing to travel from other schools. You start to see that a lot more, and it's just fun, when you start to see more of these games lining up, especially against those marquee opponents that get you hyped, that get butts in those seats, fill up Colonial Life Arena. And so many games coming up during these stretches are all going to be nationally televised, which is awesome.
Yeah, and you also have that slate that starts on the 12th of just another meat grinder that they get thrown through, like we had
good way to
just
put
before
it.
Thanksgiving. Going through Texas A&M, University of Texas with the Longhorns, Bama, number 10 Oklahoma, number 5 LSU, number 18 Tennessee. Just I found like a good comparison for this time of year. It's like at any other job when you start to get to that Christmas, New Year's slate, you're kind of slowing down, easing off the gas on how hard you're really working.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what we're doing here with South Carolina basketball.
You need
it.
Give
you these two games. It's like you've been through a bunch of these tough opponents, these ranked opponents up through Thanksgiving, and then you got a tough slate after the New Year. Just kind of take it easy. Here's Charleston Southern, Wofford. Of course, all respect to those programs, but honestly, it should be very stress-free to sit through those games.
Should be. There's programs that you consider cupcakes for a reason, and there's something to be had when you have these types of opponents and types of matchups. It's just going to happen. There's going to be lopsided affairs. We've seen it time and time again. And no, it's not any disrespect we want to give to other Division I programs. It's just what's to be expected. And there's just too many moving pieces, too much of a size and scoring differential from South Carolina for there to be any trouble, pending some kind of crazy miracle. So the only thing as we go on into this slate that really makes it a little bit easier, and it's not going to be easy as we go in, even to the first two games. I mean, just looking at Missouri and Mississippi State in this stretch, they both have 10 wins already. Not ranked yet, but still 10 wins, nothing to sneeze at. Luckily for us, Texas A&M is having a little bit of a down year. They've had a couple close losses to not really the best teams, but some ranked teams as well. Right now, they're only sitting at 5-5. But you never know. You never know any given day, especially against a conference opponent. But other than that, every single team from the start of the new year, pretty much all the way getting towards the end of January, is either top 10 team or at least is having 9 or 10 wins right now. Looking at Oklahoma, they're 9-1. Everyone else during this stretch has 10 wins notched on their belt already, except for Texas A&M. So this is really going to be a grind for the Gamecocks. So they really need to make sure they get through these next two games nice and easy, and enjoy the holiday season as best as they can, because there's not going to be a time you're really able to relax, and you want to start stringing wins together. You want to make sure you are starting to show some dominance in the conference, because I have full full and wholeheartedly expect Texas and LSU. I'm really looking at those two programs to potentially challenge South Carolina for this crown. Even Tennessee, they're undefeated right now at 8-0. This is going to be such a good matchup for South Carolina. Everywhere across the board, there's going to be so many great games. A lot of talent is really centered on the SEC conference this year, and it's only going to make for some really good marquee games, make for some great television, and some really good highlight moments, and also just for the fan interest. I cannot stress this enough, Adam, as we've talked about these games and things that South Carolina is not afraid to schedule. You don't even have to worry about scheduling these because they schedule themselves, and just that stretch, between Texas at Alabama, at home against Oklahoma, and then at home again against LSU. Like, wow, just what a crazy 4-game stretch from the 12th to the 23rd of January. That is going to be one heck of a month for some women's basketball.
Yeah, it's going to be real exciting, and I'm really excited to see how they navigate once they get into this SEC play. As you mentioned, it's going to get tougher. It's only going to get harder when you go through that slate, that handful of games with 10-win opponents or top 10,
or
top
more.
15
Yeah,
opponents
just
or more.
all back-to-back.
Yeah, by that point, who knows what these teams are. We could have, A&M, who's a little bit on the down year.
Only one right now is around 500. Everyone else, either 9-1, 10-1, or better.
Yeah, and then who knows what A&M could look like. They could find their stride in the next, few weeks before that game. And it really does depend on when you play teams. I mean, I think we saw it early with our loss at UCLA. They caught us at a point in a year where we were having these slow starts, and then the last few games they haven't had those slow starts. So if you face them at a different point in the year, maybe there's a different outcome, and that's the same for every sport. It all depends on when you play them, but you can only play the teams on your schedule. It's going to be exciting to see what happens once we get into SEC play, into that slate that I'm very excited to watch in early to mid January with the games against LSU and Texas, especially Texas, because friend of ours, a bit of a Longhorn fan. So.
See, now is he a fan of the women's basketball team though? Because they have been very successful as of recent. I don't know. I know he loves, of course, Texas football, but does he just love the university in general?
That I would have to ask him about. I never actually brought it up, but it'd be funny if the one part of Texas that hasn't been disappointing is the one that's he's not paying too much attention to.
Well, I mean, you can't say the football team. I mean, yeah,
they've been pretty disappointing.
They've been to the point of being disappointed. But I mean, hell, you're still in the playoff. You're there. You have an opportunity to make a lot of noise, but they could have a disappointing exit. You never know. They got Clemson in the first round. We'll see if they could dispatch them. But they don't have the toughest stretch overall as we're continuing on with this. So it is going to be interesting to see as we're going through these trials who is going to be making that leap. And that's just something too from a quick sidebar. So excited for the college football playoff. That is going to be a great time, a great series of games to see before we really start getting back into the thick and the chock full of matchups that we have on the women's side. But as we keep focusing on that, Adam, this is going to be just, again, a great time. We can actually get together. We can watch a lot of these games on national TV. For the ones that are in person, I fully expect to get to a good handful of these games because I want to see Colonial Life Arena rocking. I want to feel that energy, and I want to also continue to see how this team is going to start to combat more of what they're thrown or what is thrown at them in the paint. Because going back and just looking at things from this prior season where they went 38-0, they won that title, could say it till I'm blue in the face. It was a bit easier at times because we had Camila Cardoso. This is just going to be now a testament to see, all right, you've had time to navigate a bit more of your schedule. You have the conference opponents coming up. You've got some great conference opponents coming up, ones that are not going to be easy outs and easy wins whatsoever. How you're going to, of course, combat now some of their more talented centers and power forwards because they are going to be coming at you and they are going to be trying to take advantage a bit more of us not having that big height differential that we did in years past, especially with Cardoso. So that is something as we go into this series, I'm really going to be interested to see how are we trying to slow these teams down? Because I'm not sure if you recall, that was just something that was so huge even in the SEC tournament last year. The fact that we could feed it to Cardoso down low, and that was something where we could just have a little bit more of even her getting double teamed, and they were able to kick it out a little bit more to Pow Pow. Everyone else around the perimeter, some mid-range jumper shots. That was something that was a little bit simpler. Now, a different ingredient, or a different recipe, actually, different ingredients in the recipe, that's going to be something that we have to factor into this season. And it's going to be interesting as we start to get in to the thick of the schedule, these tougher games, how this is going to be broken down, how we're going to start to overcome a bit more of those changes. That is what I'm going to really keep my eyes on as we get into the new year. And of course, as we get to that point, we're going to start to break down more of these games and go over some of these bits and pieces of, all right, who does South Carolina really need to watch out for? What are they going to need to overcome to continue to keep some of this dominance into conference play? Because it will not be easy. No, it will not.
Not at all. Like we mentioned plenty of times, we're going to keep saying it all the way through. SEC play, it's no joke. It is going to be much harder on this team, and it's only going to keep getting harder as you get closer to March and you try to go make yourself a dynasty. Everyone wants to stand in your way of that.
Yeah, and it's going to be the most difficult because just looking around the scope of all the leagues, all the conferences, there's plenty of great teams out there. Plenty of them. But just as far from a conference standpoint, I could confidently say, at least through this point of the season as we're approaching Christmas, that the SEC is the most dominant. That is the most powerful conference in women's basketball currently. They should have the most teams in the NCAA tournament, and that is going to be something where you're just getting a lot of attention around. You're getting these higher caliber of athletes. You're getting more of the transfer portal talent to come to your schools. So that's where we settle right now. 2 simple games coming up. Should be simple, but a lot of excitement to be had, and there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on this program for your just in general women's basketball fans that want to catch some of these great matchups that you will be able to on your television screens or your most convenient streaming device.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. You caught me off guard the way you looked at me with that one. Yeah, a lot to look forward to, a lot to be excited about, and I think this is a good point in the season to have a little bit of a break, tap the brakes a bit before we get into the heavy swinging.
Of course, and just want to make sure everyone is having a fantastic rest of your holiday season as we get further into that. Post-graduation now for South Carolina, and Gamecocks. We can't wait to get into some of these South Carolina games against those conference opponents. I'm really, really looking forward to getting into some more of those details, looking up some stats, and keeping y'all informed as we keep on that march, trying to seek another national title this year. I know they can do it. I'm confident in them. And we will see you next time here on Ladies First. I am Tony. That was Adam. We are gentlemen as we were raised, and we know it's ladies first, and we'll see you next time.